everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I am back with another video, and this time I'll be doing a highly requested video, which will be our powder to liquid ratio. So for that, I'm going to be using this Tammy Taylor practice sheet, and what this does, it basically helps you with your product consistency. So as you can see, it gives you the step as far as dipping, wiping, dragging, placing, lifting, patting, and stroking. And those are all the steps that it requires for you to have the perfect acrylic application. So once again, we are doing a powder to liquid ratio, or the acrylic application video that everybody's been asking for. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and let's get started. Alrighty y'all, so for this video, the products that we're going to be using will be our Mia's Secret acrylic system, which is our powder, and our liquid. And the powder comes in a bottle like this. You see it's Mia's Secret pink acrylic powder. And then the liquid, I pour it in a small bottle because the bottle, it's huge. So I just poured it in this old OPI bottle. And for our brush, I'll be using my Alpha brush in a number 9, and it's an oval. And then I do have the link and the promo code for the Alpha brushes, so you guys can go check them out. And then I'll also be using a little dapping dish to put my liquid in. And then I'm also going to be using a paper towel. And for my paper towels, I use the Viva paper towels because they're really absorbent and they just work really good compared to others. So once again, that's our liquid, our powder, our Alpha brush in a number 9, and a dapping dish. And then I'm also going to be using the Tammy Taylor practice hand, which looks like this. And then on the side, it helps you do your beads. So we're going to be using maybe this side, and yeah, let's get started. Alrighty y'all, so once again, I'm using my Tammy Taylor practice hand. So before we get started, I want to read the notes that are on this sheet. So number 1 says, always work with your nail liquid and powder on your dominant side. So I am right-handed, so I always keep my powder and my liquid on the right hand. Number 2 says, powder jar should not be placed on a wiping towelette as the jar may stick. Okay, that's the second one, and I always do that only because sometimes when I'm wiping, my paper towel moves around. So I put my jar and my liquid over it, but I always try to wipe down, lower, that way it doesn't get on my actual dapping dishes. But that one, I guess, is up to you if you want to place it on your towelette or not. And number 3 says, use same size powder jar at your station to make consistent dragging every time. So you want to make sure that your dapping dish is always the same size. That way you kind of get used to dragging. You don't want one to be too big because then you'll be dragging a lot, and then a smaller one you just be dragging a little bit. So try and keep the same jar in your station, whether it's a white acrylic, pink acrylic, clear. Just make sure they're all about the same size. And then there's another note that says, practice 50 nails on your practice sheet every day to increase your speed, create more beautiful consistent nails. A sculpted nail is made with 4 balls. When you can create beautiful balls, you can create beautiful nails. So that is a saying by Tammy Taylor. So once again, she's saying that to have a more consistent beautiful nails, and to speed up your process, then that you need to do at least 50 nails on your practice sheet a day. So once again, we're gonna go ahead and just start this. I'm gonna just do a couple of these, and then I'm gonna show you how I do it on my actual trainer hand. So first thing you want to do is you want to make sure whenever you're applying your acrylic, I always dip my brush in, and as you can see, I wipe it on the side of the dapping dish to where it's wet but not dripping. And see, like, you want to make sure that for a big bead, you just drag like halfway. And you see how like I wiped it off too much to where it wasn't enough liquid. That's why it's still dry acrylic right there. So that to know, you see how like it's just stiff. So if I was to just dip it in there and not wipe it off, it would be way too wet. You see how it's just running off my brush? So that's another note. Like, it's just this one's too stiff, that one's too wet. So what I do is I dip it in, I wipe it off, and then grab my bead. And you see how like it's not dripping and it's not stiff. If I was to lay it down, it would still move around. So that's what you want. So once again, I dip my brush in, I wipe it off, and then I dip it in. And as you guys know, I don't like working with a lot of acrylic, so this would be the right amount. So I'm going to go ahead and place that on that first little circle. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that your acrylic doesn't leave the circle. So see, that's really good. So that would be a large bead. You see how it's not leaving the circle? Now if I was to dip my brush in and wipe it all the way off and get a bead, it would probably be too dry. I actually didn't get a lot of liquid or a lot of powder. But see, that one's too wet. It's running out of the circle. Let's see. And if I was to just dip it in there and go in and get a bead, it's way too wet. If I place it down, it's going to go all around the circle. So you want to make sure that your beads are more like this. So once again, to get that consistency, you dip it in, wipe it off, and I just drag. And you want to wait a couple of seconds before you place it down. Put your bead down, pat it, and as you guys know, this is the same process that you would do on an actual nail. You pat it down, and then if it was, you know, an actual nail, then you would drag down, but for now we're just patting the acrylic down. So that's a large bead. Now I'm going to go in and do a medium one. So for that, as you can see, instead of dipping my brush all the way in, I'm only dipping my brush like halfway in, wiping it off, dip it in, wait a couple of seconds while the acrylic sets in my brush, and we're going to place that ball down. Once again, we're just going to pat it down. And that's our second bead. So that would be a medium-sized bead. Now for a smaller bead, you would just dip the tip of your brush in. Dip the tip, dip it in your powder, wait a couple of seconds while it's set, and place it down. And the Mia Secret acrylic system is a little bit more runny than others. I can try to see if I have some Tammy Taylor. But I know that's what me and somebody was talking about the other day, that no matter how much you wipe your brush off, the Mia Secret acrylic system is still going to be a little bit more on the runny side. So if you have that problem, it's really just a matter of practicing over and over again. But remember, for a large bead, I've dipped my brush in, wipe it off, dip, and just let the acrylic set. And let's see. Place your bead down, pat it down, and then that's it. So, sorry, it keeps moving around. Just pat it down, and that's it. So it's just a matter of practicing. So now I'm going to go ahead and do it on the practice hand. And let me see, I think it was some other techniques on here. See, on here, these are more for pink and white nails. So like number 1 would be your white, number 2, 3, and 4 would be pink. So since I'm not doing pink and white, I'm not going to do that. But see, here's the process. It tells you the liquid is called monomer, the powder is called polymer, and you see how you dip and then you wipe on the edge and you drag from one side of the dapping dish to the other. Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and do the first nail. So we're going to dip our brush, wipe it off, dip it into the powder, let it sit for a couple of seconds. You see how the rest of the acrylic is getting wet. We're going to place that bead right in the middle where the natural nail and the tip meet. We're going to pat it down just like we were doing on a practice sheet, and then we drag down. We're dragging down towards the tip. And for this, I'm going to be doing the 4 bead method, and then remember, if you need to add more, then we're going to do so. So I'm just gently dragging. So far, this is what the side of our nail looks like. So I'm going to go back in and do another one on the tip. That's going to be our second bead. Place it right on the tip. Brush it down. As you can see, like I'm barely even like touching the acrylic. I'm moving it around, but I'm not brushing too hard because I don't want to just brush all the acrylic off the nail. I just want to brush it down towards the tip. And as you work, make sure that you're wiping your sides off. That way the acrylic is not running over to the sides. Same thing for the tip. Just brush it off. Okay. So now the third one would be closer to the cuticle area. And this is what creates your stress area right here. If you don't have a stress area or an apex, that's where your nail gets its strength from. And if you like accidentally hit your nail or something and your nail is too flat right there, it will break really easily. So make sure that you have a nice stress area. And I'll show y'all a side view in a second. And then my fourth one is going to be right above that last one. Same thing, as you can see, I pat it down and then I brush it down. And remember, don't brush too hard because you want most of the acrylic to stay in that area because that's our stress area. But you want to blend it down towards the tip. Okay, let me look at my nail. And it's a little bit hard for us to do the apex on this trainer hand, but I think this is pretty good. You can't really tell. Let me see. I'm going to do another one just so you guys can see how it's supposed to look. So I'm going to do another one right there just to make it a little bit thicker. As you can see, I pat it around and then I'm just gently brushing down towards the tip. Okay, maybe that's a better view. So see, you always want this area to be a little bit thicker than the rest of the nail. And once again, you can't really tell on this practice hand, but this would be a really nice size nail. So this is our square nail, and we did the acrylic application. So we're going to go ahead and do the other ones as well. And I'm going to go ahead and get this one out the way so I don't mess it up. So once again, I place my bead, or dip my brush, into the liquid and make sure that it's nice and wet. And before I take it out, I dip it, I wipe it off on the side of the dapping dish to where my brush is wet but not dripping. I dip it into my powder, let it set, place that bead right in the middle where the natural nail and the tip meet, pat it around, and then we're going to brush it down towards the tip. And always remember to clean your brush off really good. You don't want any acrylic stuck on your brush because that will cause more acrylic to keep getting stuck on your brush, and it would just cause a hot mess. So the next bead, we're going to place it right behind that one. Right on the tip. This is our second bead. We're placing it on the tip, which was right below that first one. And this is just so it give our nail tip some strength. Brush it down. Our third one is right behind that one. Place it down. Pat it around. You just move it wherever you want it to go. You have to get the product that you feel comfortable working. You don't want to get one big bead and then it's running all over the place. So work with a brush and the product that you can control. See, I'm used to working with this smaller brush. If I was to use a huge brush, I just can't do it because this is what I'm used to. So remember, make sure that you're using a brush that you're used to and that you like working with. That way it makes the process easier. Okay, so the fourth one is going to go back closer to the cuticle area. So remember, place it down, pat it around, and then brush it down towards the tip. And remember, this third and fourth bead is what creates our apex. And remember, the apex is where our nail gets its strength from. If you hit your nail, that's where it basically holds the nail together. So if you have a really flat nail back there, then most likely your nail is going to break off. Okay, so I'm going to go in and add just a little bit or a little bit, yeah, a little bit more, because like I said, it's harder for us to create an apex on this trainer hand. Okay, so as you can see, like I said, it's pretty hard to tell, but as you can see, we have that little arch right there. And like, just like on my nails, you see how it's not just all the way flat, we have that little arch right there, or you can tell on that one. But you want to make sure that you have that stress area, because if not, your nails will break easily. Oh, I ended up getting acrylic on this one. So I'm gonna go ahead and do another one. I might just go ahead and do all of them, but let's see. So remember, you want to make sure that you wipe your brush off a lot. You don't want that acrylic to get stuck. As you can see, my acrylic is getting stuck on my brush. So I do have a little dapping dish with brush cleaner, which is my brush cleaner by Tammy Taylor. It looks like this. It's brush cleaner, and it says remove acrylic buildup in your brush. So I just put some in a little dapping dish every time that I do a set, and whenever my brush starts getting acrylic on it, I dip it in there for a couple of minutes until it comes off. And you want to basically do this after each set. You want to just leave your brush in the little brush cleaner for about 10 minutes to let that acrylic just soak off. Let's see. And just for now, I'm trying to take it off so I can hurry up and move on. Okay. So remember, I'm using that brush cleaner, and you want to make sure you don't use acetone, because that will mess up your brushes. So just sit your brushes in brush cleaner for about 10 minutes after each set, and you will be good to go. So once again, we're going to get our first bead. We're going to place it right where the nail tip and the natural nail meet. And as you can see, if my acrylic starts running over to the sides, I push it back in, and then I brush down towards the tip. And this is actually going to be a perfect example of what happens when you don't brush, or when your brush is dirty, or when you have acrylic on your brush, because I can tell that the acrylic keeps getting stuck on my brush. Let me see. Second bead, I'm going to place it right below that one. So as you can see, I'm doing a 4-bead method, and there are people that do the 1-bead method, but I don't really like it. I'd rather just add as I need it. So my third bead will go right behind that one. Brush it down towards the tip. Remember to always clean around the cuticle area. And then the last one will go right behind or above that one. Remember, clean around that cuticle area. And remember, always wipe the sides, because a lot of the time if you don't wipe the sides, it will take away from your shape, and then you'll have to do more filing whenever you go back to shape the nails. So that's our 3 beads, or our 3 nails, and that was using the 4-ball method. So remember, the first bead, we place it right in the center where the natural nail and the tip meet, so like right there. The second, we place it right on the tip, and we brush it down towards the tip. The third one, we place right above the first one, and then the fourth one, we place right above that third one, and then we just brush it all the way down. So once again, this is what they look like. They all have a pretty good thickness to them. And then for this last one, I'm going to do a what not to do. So you want to make sure that you don't just, let me see, I'm going to add more liquid to this. You want to make sure that you don't just dip your brush in and go in here and place your bead down, because you see how it's going to start running all over the place. It's going to get all on the sides. It's going to get on the skin. See how it's getting on the skin? You want to make sure that you don't do that. Don't just go from your liquid to your powder. You want to make sure that you wipe it off on your dapping dish before you dip it into the liquid. Let's see. Another thing you want to make sure you don't do is just go in with your acrylic and just start brushing away. You don't want to just like place your acrylic down and then I'm not going to wipe my brush off. See how it's acrylic on there? I don't want to just go in there again and get more powder, because it's going to just keep getting stuck on my brush, and the acrylic is going to keep building into or onto my brush. So then it's going to start drying, and every time that I place a bead down, that acrylic on the brush is going to just, you see how it's already in there? It's just going to keep getting stuck on there, and it's just going to build up, and every time you brush, it's going to be more acrylic on your brush. So make sure that every time before you dip back into your liquid or your powder, that you're wiping your brush off really good before you get your other bead, or every time you brush down, you wipe it off. Go dip, dip, put another bead, wipe it off, dip, dip, put your acrylic on. So those are really the main two things that you don't want to do. Remember, clean your brush really good, and also before you dip your powder or your liquid into the powder, you want to make sure that you brush your brush off good. That way it's not dripping, because if not, like as you've seen, the acrylic is all on their skin, and it's really hard to get the acrylic off their skin once it's dry. So once again, this was our powder to ratio video. I hope this was helpful. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at GetNailed32, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Once again, this is how they turned out. They look pretty good. So I hope this was helpful. Bye-bye. I also forgot to mention that I'll leave the link in the description to the practice sheet that I use by Tammy Taylor. You guys can just print it out, put it in a plastic sleeve, and just practice.